you've got a tough job. It's 5 p.m. Friday evening, it's a tough job, right? So we should have offered drinks together with our session, clearly. Great. We have half an hour. So Friday evening, 5 p.m., half an hour will definitely ensure that it's worth your time that you're spending here. And we have an amazing panel members here. So let's start with Kenneth. If you can introduce all of us. Kenneth, we're starting with Kenneth. If you can highlight your role, the company you come from, and how do you interact with carbon credits in your job? If you can touch upon that as well, Kenneth.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kenneth. I'm from Razer. I'm the Global Sustainability Lead in Razer. So I take care of everything from corporate sustainability, from our products, as well as to incubate new AI or climate tech solutions within Razer. So we try to solve problems across the ecosystem. So we interact with carbon on a day-to-day basis. We are the SBTi validated company, so we have to really track our way all the way to 2030 on a 1.5 degrees Celsius scenario. So I'll talk a little bit more later. Yeah.
Sorry, I must say that we sustainability professionals, we love acronyms, right? When Kenneth says SBTi is Science-Based Target Initiative, which essentially means you're going to reduce close to 90% of your emission by 2050, right? He's going to talk more about that. Poyan.
Hi, Poyan Rajamand. I am a founder of a new joint venture between Standard Chartered Bank and NG, which is a digital tool that helps financiers do the process of identification, due diligence, and the following follow-up of carbon credit projects faster and better.
That's great. Thank you so much, Poyan. Karen?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Karen. I'm from China. So I'm the founder of Climind. As you might guess, my company is one of the many here trying to democratize bringing large language model AI into climate sector. So we are a global team headquartered in Hong Kong. It's really lovely to be here. And then I think the topic said the trust, the credibility in the carbon market, that's like one of the many, we see a great potential AI not can just reduce the cost, but most importantly, we're here to bring more values in this market. And thank you for having me.
Thanks, Karen. Dinesh.
Thanks, Praveen. A wonderful good evening to all of you. I'm Dinesh. I'm the partner and executive director at Infrablocks Capital, which is launching a decarbonization fund close to around $50 million for Asia and $50 million for Africa. And we are tech-based, which means that we also have an end-to-end digital ecosystem from risk assessment, online risk assessment, to ratings, to writing the PDD documentations online, DMRV, and tokenization of carbon credits. Thanks.
Wow, so many acronyms again, right? We love that. Sorry for that. And I must highlight that before the current role that Dinesh has, he used to be the CEO of Climate Action Data Trust, which is an initiative by World Bank and Singapore government. So clearly, we're going to have many tough questions for you, Dinesh, right? But let's start with Kenneth. And Kenneth, you mentioned about your science-based target. Maybe just to give a background, we spoke a lot about net zero in the previous session. And I'll just share two statistics, which is pretty interesting, and I often share this. First is, in 2019, we had close to 16% of world's GDP committed to net zero back in 2019. Can you guess how much would that be right now as we speak? More than 50%, less than 50%? Anyone? Anyone from the panel here?
With the recent election results, you would never know.
Oh, wow. It could change. It could change by Monday, is it? Well, that's correct. If you look at the latest numbers, we're talking about 92% of the world's GDP, 92, is committed to net zero, 16 to 92, and in the span of last 4 to 5 years. That's incredible. And that's the space at which we are looking at the countries committing to net zero. Now let's look at the financial institutions. We'll talk about asset managers. I mean, I'm sure, Dinesh, you can share a bit more later as an asset manager as well. We have $57 trillion of asset under management committed to net zero as a part of Net Zero Asset Manager Alliance, right? And likewise, if you look at banks, we got $75 trillion being represented by the banks collectively that are committed to net zero under Net Zero Banking Alliance. We're talking about huge capital, and that clearly would show the flow of capital would change to the kind of companies who have committed to such initiatives, right? Now, in all this, so Kenneth, my question with that background is, with all that context, if we have to achieve net zero, what will be the role of carbon credit, right, in achieving those net zero commitments that we talk about, globally, nationally, as well as at entity level, at a company level?
Yeah, so just now I started my introduction by giving an acronym. Now I'm going to make up of it by explaining what science-based target means. So I think this is a very important framework that actually adheres to the latest science around our pathway towards net zero. So very interestingly, each of the industry would have specific targets and intensity targets that they have to achieve for science-based targets. So for instance, right, Razer, we choose a minimum 55% reduction in our scope 3 intensity. So I think that is, why stop at 55 and not go 100%? Unfortunately, not every company's business purpose is to plant trees. So if your business purpose is not to plant trees, is to, you know, make laksa or nice curry, you definitely have some emissions, right? So we actually have in a society where we segregate our roles, and there will and for each industry we want to maximize the possible reduction. After maximizing the maximum reduction, we then have to look at carbon credits. So I think, to be really pragmatic, there's a lot of hit around carbon credit in recent years, but I think more importantly, we need to critically look at that, because unfortunately, everybody have a different business purpose, and it's very important that we separate the roles and support the carbon market so that collectively we can trade and we can let the people who do carbon removal better, do nature-based solution better, focus on their work, while we focus on what we do best in a responsible manner.
That's interesting. Did you say 55% by when?
2030.
2030, 55% by 2030. And so what you mentioned is, in short, do your part first and then focus on carbon credit. Means there has to be a substantial amount of organic reduction that happens by your efforts, and then you can look into instruments such as carbon credits. Am I right?
That is correct.
Great, great. And maybe this is where, Dinesh, can you share a bit more of your thoughts on how do you look at credible carbon credits? There are various definitions, ways in which we can look into environmental integrity and credibility, and it has been often been questioned out in the market. How do you assess credibility of carbon credits?
Yeah, so theoretically speaking, we always check about the double counting first.
Double counting
aspect, and I think this is not a new topic. This has been there for many years, and UNFCCC has been discussing this for a long time. So we start with there, which is first of all a basic kind of a check in terms of to understand the integrity, the quality of the carbon credits, that the claim is not done more than once, and then we move on to the kind of the additionality check and the permanence and the related aspects of how the projects have achieved the determined goals and targets, including the sustainable development objectives of the project. So that's the second aspect of understanding how these projects are being developed under the standards as such.
Can you share a little more about additionality, since you use that term, right?
Yeah, no, it's definitely to understand that the projects are being implemented not as a business as usual scenario, but it is being developed against some overcoming certain challenges, and therefore you need additional funding, and that's how the carbon credits come into play to give you this additional revenue to make this project implement on a challenging scenario, but yet the revenues would further give the boost in terms of the additional revenues. So that's the second aspect of it. The third one, very recently, most of us would have heard about the initiatives by various kind of organizations like ICVCMI, again another kind of acronym, and then VCMI. So just for paucity of time, these two are basically addressing the quality and the integrity aspects of how the buyers and sellers can understand, by following certain protocols that these two initiatives have launched, that the sellers and buyers have got the confidence to say that they are developing these projects as per the protocols and the initiatives that have been approved by these ICVCMI and VCMI. But there is more deeper than this in terms of understanding how the buyer would like to understand the permanence of these credits. When they buy it, they don't have the risk of being exposed that these projects never happened. There has been cases where the projects have been issuing credits which have never happened on ground, and there are certain cases where the kind of credits have been sold more than once, or claimed more than once, or used or retired more than once. And therefore, it has to be seen that these two initiatives, ICVCMI and VCMI, go to a greater depth in terms of ensuring that both the sellers and buyers have the confidence that what they are doing in this market is of high quality and integrity.
So am I right to say that if there is a project that reduces carbon emissions, under a BAU scenario that is not eligible for carbon credits, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's very important. So it's not just about reducing emission, but reducing emissions with the intent of reducing pollution and not with the intent of making money. If it's making money as a part of BAU, then it's not eligible, right?
Absolutely.
So maybe Poyan, what all the credibility related aspects that Dinesh mentioned, and we also know that from a perspective or demand side, there's enough demand. We just established that so many investors, corporates committing to net zero, SBTi, plus International Civil Aviation Authority has something called CORSIA, which is a scheme which requires airline to buy carbon credits as well. So there's a lot of demand. Singapore, we have carbon tax wherein they allow 5% of your taxable emissions to be offset with carbon credits. So demand is pretty well established. But we don't see that supply coming up. Clearly, there are some strong challenges that market is suffering with. Do you want to share your thoughts on what are the key challenges that you have observed?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for a project to generate carbon credit for Kenneth to buy, they normally they need funding. So they come to, for example, a bank wanting to borrow money for that. And if you think about it, a lender looking at these projects see a number of challenges. One is costs, meaning for that project, be it to plant a tree or a mechanical device that extracts CO2 from the atmosphere, for that to happen, the bank needs to hire consultants, advisory. They need to potentially buy data. They need to buy rating agency, etc. That bill runs up in hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the amount they can lend to these projects are in $1 million. So that is right now a little bit off.
I feel bad to hear that consultants are the challenge.
They do that. And these small loans would work in case these decision-making processes were fast. They're not. Because a lot of projects they get is so complex, there's a back and forth with consultants, project owners, etc. So you're looking at a 6 to 12 months decision making. And lastly, they see a bundle of risk. They see counterparty risk because these projects are often in countries, which are developing countries. They see reputational risk. Because again, if they lend money to a project that actually doesn't reduce carbon, they will be criticized, and they see a lot of other risks. That's why some of these acronyms and legislations that you mentioned are important to change that perception of risk, as well as the fintech and AI and all those that come to allow financiers to move that along much faster than today.
That's useful. I think you mentioned permanence, largely, it's one of the concerns. The speed of decision making, which you're absolutely right. It could take up to 12 months, for example, for a company to see the revenue from carbon credits. Whereas if you go to a bank, and we just heard in the previous panel, you could go to a bank and apply for green finance, green loan, sustainability-linked loan. That's way faster, much faster. So you could have sustainability-linked financing much faster than carbon credits. So with all these challenges, maybe Karen, can you share your thoughts how AI technology can come into picture to try and mitigate these challenges?
Yeah. Before answering this, I want to give a more personal story how I entered this field, and then
Sure.
which is also the story why we started this. I was working at the Imperial College London, the Green Finance Center, and majority of my time was part of the work you just mentioned, like to go through the necessary readings, the making sure the procedures right, and then that we deal with different financial sectors. Doesn't make sense, I think, from the labor perspective. Several weeks ago, I was at Berlin attending the World Bank's carbon pricing conference, releasing the latest report, which is certainly like the Bible types of reading if you want to track this market. I think carbon market, if it works, that's perfect model, because this is one of the few things it's a global goal, but it happened in different domestically. And then this is one of the few assets that can really tie the efforts of reducing carbon related to the environment, and then like bring the actual revenue to certain party. I think the thing we're tapping into here, like the one is the efficiency. That's really obvious. Our previous panel, some of the panelists are speaking similar projects we're doing right now. So like using AI into the tax-related efficiency issue, like analyzing the ESG report, reading the report, like PDD report for carbon credits. I think that's one really obvious use case, but it's not the key. We can do that without large language model. We can do that without AI. It's just faster. And then I think the key thing second is the additional value technology like AI, or we see a lot of blockchain solutions here as well, like the additional value. So what are they? So there's several. I can share a couple of stories. Like one is the vast amount of information data now today we have access to and then can process. That's enormous. It's not possible like until we have the tool today. In 10 years, 1 out of 10 will be from Africa. Like this is something I just take away from the UN. So I think the implementation for carbon market is the global south, like the countries are the most of the place where projects were developed. It's not where most buyers located at. So how we can make it easier to generate carbon credits, it's not possible to be done by human. Like the MRV, we call it how you can do the project monitoring. So for sure you need a scalable technology, remote sensing. We'll work with different module data as well, like to use AI to interpret the data to make it impossible possible today. And then second is on the trading perspective, like carbon market is hard, like by its nature, how you trade and also how you price it. Like I just checked the number before the panel. Like today, the voluntary carbon market globally is like almost just $2 billion. Compliance is $800 billion, and this is still small compared with most of the commodity of the other thing. And then to just wrap up this, our use case are many, but our solutions are really simple. So how we leverage today large language model to make smarter decision with data. It can be any types of data. And then the most key thing here are the experience, like from the practitioners. So we train them into the model to help our users to facilitate. And then this is really the final thing. So I think in order to really make carbon credits be trusted, like to be scalable, it's really like how we can price it, like making it into balance sheet. And then I think for today, still there's no standard accounting system that can put the carbon asset into the balance sheet. So that's something beyond AI, but this is really like my story and the climate story, like how we enter this field, and then hopefully we can bring more values to that.
That's great, truly inspiring. Thanks for sharing that. And Poyan, any thoughts? You have gone through the entire cycle as well.
I agree, Paul. I think there is a lot that you can do beyond AI. But working with the institutional investors that we have, like NG and Standard Chartered Bank, if you think of a carbon team, there are one hand, there are 5, 6, 7, 10 people. Each project is hundreds and thousands of pages of technical text. And these people are buying carbon for themselves as well as others. So Razer must have a set of requirements, which type of carbon they want to have, while another customer has a different type of requirement. Merging these requirements with the right project is extremely time consuming, and that's something, an easy example of what the AI can do much, much faster than we can do today. And add to that then the second and third level audit that needs to be done. Is this project have the requirement certification? Is it, all of those things, scraping the internet, etc. So I see AI, although as you say, it's a simpler uplift to augment the current carbon teams, that is actually essential before we can do next level value add.
That's absolutely. Thanks for sharing that point. Maybe Kenneth, we spoke a lot about improving the integrity and trust in carbon markets. And when you go and deal with your customers, as Razer, when you deal with your B2C customers, what is the, do you also use carbon credits together with your products? Because I understand you're very strong into life cycle assessment, you're very strong into using carbon credits as a part of the products as well. So have you been using it? And if you are, how is it being perceived by the market?
So as a brand that's very close to the consumer, like you and me, right, we have to be really sensitive about how the consumers are feeling. We have noticed a lot of brands, I will not name the brands over here, but obviously you can actually check it out. So there are a lot of brands, for the ease of marketing, they're calling their product carbon neutral products. This is a very good concept. We don't want to tell people, you are buying this product from a net zero company. It doesn't make sense to a lot of people. So a lot of brands like to call themselves the first carbon neutral watch, for instance, right? But Razer, when we ask ourselves internally, our motto is for gamers by gamers. We have 200 million gamers worldwide. And we want to ask ourselves, if we're going to buy carbon credits for our gamers, what does the gamer want? If I were to offset and I buy carbon credit for every single product, I'm eventually going to increase the cost of the product. So we decided that the right approach is not to force carbon offsets on our consumers, but allowing our consumers to make a conscious choice whether do they want to offset or not. So we work very closely with ESGpedia. You can visit their booth over there, ESGpedia, to really, what we do, fractionalize the carbon credit. When we first started our journey, we want to make carbon offset available on our e-commerce website. We went on to the Vera registry. We realized that a lot of consumers in the States, they are paying like 30 USD for 1,000 kg of CO2 emission removal to offset something that's only maybe 10 kg. The remaining 990 kg is wasted. So
because you can only buy one minimum.
Yes, yes. So we want to, in a way, we took a page off the crypto blockchain world to really, why not, if blockchain can tokenize it, why can't we fractionalize it by putting our record on a public registry so that people can really check whether are they doing the offset or not. Now, the next thing is we realize that consumers really want to know where they are contributing towards. When we first started this journey, we were looking at a couple of other solutions. What they have been focusing on is that, don't ask me where your money is going to. You're supporting a basket of projects. So we realized that our consumers don't like that. They like to specifically know, where is this project supporting? Is it supporting a forest in Borneo? Is it supporting a renewable energy in India? They want to precisely know where is it coming from, the vintage and things like that. And don't be surprised, consumers are very enlightened. So by doing this thorough work, fractionalizing it, you're only paying for what you really incur. We saw a huge increase in terms of uptakes in our carbon offset program. So before we started, we were asking the industry. Industry was saying that there's only 1% of the consumer that will voluntarily offset. So it's a little bit sad, but when we first started, we made the UI better. We promote full transparency. We saw it went up to 5%. Wow. And for consumers in Europe, it's even up to 10%. So
1% to 10%.
Yeah.
Just by fractionalizing the carbon credit, essentially.
Just by communicating properly to consumers, be accountable to them, they feel that they are compelled to really be doing their part for the environment. So that's it's not all bleak in the consumer market. There is also a light that consumers are driving the change at this point in time.
Actually, that brings to an interesting question, because what essentially you said is that there is a challenge of accessibility to carbon market as well. That's what you're saying, right? From a B2C perspective, from a consumer perspective. And that very much aligns with one of the questions we have from the floor. And interesting, and happy for any one of you to answer. How can individuals participate in carbon market? Again, back to your point, accessibility, right? Yeah. So there's an approach of going to proper registries out there, Vera and so on, which is a sophisticated method that corporates can do. But how should we as individuals start taking participation? On that note, please feel free to put in your questions. I can see the questions coming in. We still have 5 to 10 more minutes. We'll be happy to take these questions. So anyone would like to take this?
I'll quickly say, I think it's more Kenneth's area, but I think the options are plenty. The first option is that you go to, as Kenneth said, there are a lot of platforms that offer the offsetting options for multiple purposes. That is one option where you choose to buy these fractionalized carbon credits in tokens, and then you try to offset whatever that you want to offset. So that is one option. The other one is that you pay as you go. So when you book a flight ticket, there are options given by the airlines themselves. So like that, there are a lot of merchandise that it's not like that Amazon has democratized that yet in a big way. Of course, they are doing it in a pilot manner. So that's another one where you choose a particular a merchandise or a kind of a transaction that you're doing it on a day-to-day basis. Then you have these options to offset your emissions in kgs instead of tons, as Kenneth said. And then the third one is basically to see how you yourself want to offset your day-to-day life carbon emissions as well. So there are a lot of tools that allow you to try to estimate what is your per day emissions, which of course then you can annualize it and then try to offset that, and you can claim that you yourself are a carbon neutral person. So that is what one of the previous speakers as well mentioned, that my contribution or my impact to the world till 2050 is so much, and I would like to offset. So these are the options that are available.
Actually, you can also buy carbon credit as a gift. So in terms like rather to buy something that people don't need for Christmas, you can buy offsets. I actually offset this Christmas dinner. That's totally possible.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, financial institutes right now have a lot of data on you, what you're buying, etc. And increasingly, they can help you understand what is your carbon footprint, at least. And then you have technology providers. There's Earthly, there's Deedster, there's a number of them that now help consumer to get closer to what the carbon credit is and what is the project they're actually supporting. Because I think you had a fantastic point around helping the consumer understand, give them visibility to what is it that I'm actually paying for. And I think that will help, again, engagement in this space.
I want to add on one thing, like Ant Forest by Alibaba from China did a project called Ant Forest. So you can tell it's not carbon credit, but I think doing really similar logic. If you choose like a really green, sustainable way of living, it gives you the score. The score can go to like water a tree. So it goes all the way from a virtual tree to actual tree, and then you can monitor, see your tree in the app. So I think that's a really engaging ways of like having carbon credits. Like
which one was that? Did you mention?
Ant Forest.
Okay, Ant Forest. And I hope the person who asked this question didn't mean carbon trading to earn. It meant carbon trading to offset. Yeah. So it's a big difference in that. All right. Okay. Here's the next question, are there any inventory or tools that can specify or can validate if a particular green activity and project qualifies for carbon credits? Are there tools, technologies that are out there?
Yeah.
Poyan, sorry.
Then I'll give it to you. Sorry.
Yes.
No, there are tools, and I think Wang can mention more about that. These are coming up more from the AI side, that you set up these tools. I was just discussing with her a couple of hours ago that you train the AI to read more about the past projects. There are almost 20,000 plus projects in the world right now which have qualified and issuing carbon credits in different degrees. But you can train the AI to do a quick analysis of these and then try to set up a kind of a calculator just to relate to the public, that you mention about the type of projects and then you try to understand whether it will qualify to earn carbon credits or not. That's the most easiest way, but it's not at foolproof yet in the public domain. The other part is in terms of how the documentations have been done so far has been manual. You take 3 to 6 months, if not even a year, to complete a complete documentation. But right now there are tools in blockchain, especially by Hedera. They have democratized again these kind of methodologies where you can write the PDDs, the project design documentation in 1 week. And that is now possible. So therefore there are different ways and tools that are now made available.
I think that's useful, Dinesh. And on that note, there is still a challenge, and which is where I would like to bring this question up, which is upvoted quite a lot. Even though we have these tools and measurement equipments that's required, the question is, what's your opinion on verification standards that still don't allow using advanced technologies? Because eventually we have to go back to the mechanisms, right? The Vera gold standard, GCC, who would be issuing carbon credits. They don't allow using advanced technologies like remote sensing in their methodologies. These could speed up and improve integrity, transparency in the market. So what are your thoughts on how this can be changed?
I'll give my 2 cents on this. It has been like that in the past, but gold standard especially has now revolutionized in terms of how they want to digitize themselves, and they are doing it end to end. And Vera is following up. In fact, Vera, just 15 days ago, they launched a massive change in their digitization, that you can automatically use their own tool and start writing the documentation and also deploy the digital monitoring and reporting and verification. So therefore, the standards are now moving towards that, but not fully done yet because none of these standards allow tokenization yet. Therefore, we have to do a digital twin and then follow those. But the good news is that most of these standards, including GCC recently, have moved towards the digitization.
Yeah. So you're saying that while project developers can adopt it, you also see the voluntary carbon market, the issuers of carbon credits also maturing and trying to improve the kind of acceptance that's required for carbon credits.
Correct.
Amazing. I know we're up 30 minutes that we had. And there's a lot that can still be discussed, and the questions are still coming in. So really appreciate and thanks for all the questions. And you have all these panel members after the session. Feel free to catch up with them offline also. But maybe we start with some closing remarks. What are the areas that you would suggest companies here to consider when looking at carbon credits, whether it's from development perspective, usage perspective, or any of the areas that you would like to share, Kenneth?
Yeah, I think let's start from communications. I think every brand, be it you are doing hardware, software, and services, I think we want to start communicating in carbon so that it creates a second language in the consumer's head, in the public's head, that they can use and they can feel that, oh, this corporate action, this activity is going to cost me X amount of carbon. So it translates in their head. When you're eating a piece of bread, immediately you know, okay, that's amount, how many calories. It will become a common language and second nature of us already. So I think all brands should really unite and start communicating in carbon. So when that language is more established, that really helps the carbon market to grow.
So this panel is equal to how much kg of carbon current? Is it?
I'm still learning.
No, for me, if you are a company that hasn't started thinking about your net zero goals, you're carrying a liability. I mean, Singapore carbon tax is going from $5 to $80 in very short time. So if you're not thinking about that, there will be a invoice coming down the line. And linked to that, I'd really suggest to think about carbon as a part of that and start kind of buying some, trading some, to understand what this is about. And as you mature, then of course you can increase your commitment.
That's interesting. Kenneth started with kg CO2. You're saying that, hey, there's an financial implication of kg CO2, which is true enough. It's going to go to $80, could go to $80. But, I mean, a fun fact, Sweden, they already have a carbon tax of 184 Sing dollars. 184 already. They started way back in 1992, by the way. So clearly, the carbon pricing can hit you. So it's not just the emissions. The question is, so what if I have that emission? And it could have financial implication. Karen.
I think carbon, take it as a way to communicate across region and across business. It's like everyone can speak English, most countries in the world. Like today, a company do really green in your sector, that's like a name card. And then beyond that, I think it's really a low cost of advanced business and then like sustainability. Like compare with tax or other potential like a finance risk you need to conquer in the future, like carbon market, I think it's a really low barrier sector to enter.
Thanks, Aaron.
I would say there is no escape, right? So you have to accept, endorse, and then move on with that fact that you have to really address carbon as carbon. And more important, the good news is that sustainability is now a business model. It's not something that you feel it as a penalty or a burden in your day-to-day business. It has to become a part of your own life. And at the same time, it's making money as well. So sustainability is green, and green is money as well. So therefore, grab the opportunity in terms of how you try to endorse yourself as going green or going carbon neutral or net zero, whatever you want to pick. But try to also make that it's a kind of a very, very well-led stakeholder engagement. Without that, doing in silos is not going to really help. Therefore, these are the few things which I think the private sector has to keep in mind when they want to move towards the net zero.
Thanks, Dinesh. I like the way you mentioned that sustainability is a way of doing business already now. It's a mainstream topic. Absolutely true. Absolutely. So thank you so much again, Dinesh, Kevin, Poyan, Kenneth. Really appreciate that. Thanks for all the insights that you've shared today. Thank you.
Thank you.